Well, the Supreme Court has asked the Centre for a response over the status of Rohingya refugees. It comes after a plea was filed by 2 Rohingya refugees after the central government said it plans to identify and deport illegal immigrants, including the Rohingyas. The plea filed at the Apex Court states that the minority Rohingya community in Myanmar is facing persecution in the Buddhist majority country. Let's go to Raghavendra Rao joining us now from the WION newsroom on the very latest. Raghavendra, this story continues to be unfolding. Certainly a tragic situation to see what has unfolded in terms of the refugees seeking help.
Well, indeed, Archit, and the Supreme Court is hearing this matter wherein these petitioners have argued that these Rohingya refugees who are settled now in various parts of India, including areas like Jammu and the national capital region of Delhi, they should not be deported back. Now, rough estimates peg the number of Rohingyas in India at around 40,000 right now. And the Indian government is likely to deport them because the Indian government stance is in line with what the Myanmar government is conducting in terms of operations in that country. And Rohingyas, they have fled Myanmar in great numbers. A lot of them have crossed over into Bangladesh. A lot of them have lost their lives in trying to cross over to Bangladesh. Some of them have found refuge in Bangladesh. Many others have found refuge in India. Now, these petitioners are arguing that India is signatory to several international conventions, which makes it mandatory or makes it incumbent upon it to, not deport these, migrants back to Myanmar. So the Supreme Court has now decided to hear this matter on September 11th. It has asked the government of India to file a response by that date on whether the Rohingyas can be allowed to stay in India or not.
All right, let me bring in Jessica Taneja standing by as well, our correspondent. Jessica, now the Supreme Court pushing the government to provide a status on the refugee crisis when it comes to the Rohingyas. What are some of the expected outcomes?
Well, Archit, in fact, the plea was filed by Rohingya immigrants themselves, named Mohammad Salimullah and Mohammad Shakir, who in fact are themselves refugees under the United Nations High Commission of Refugees. They had claimed that they had taken refuge in India after, in fact, escaping the mass violence in the country. And I think Prashant Bhushan, who's representing these petitioners, has come out strong and said a country like India cannot refuse the refugees the rights they deserve. And in fact, he's made to the legal aspect. In fact, he said that the proposed deportation is contrary to the constitutional protection, which is Article 14, which guarantees a right to equality, and also Article 21, which guarantees a right to life and personal liberty. So these are the important legal aspects when it comes to the Rohingya refugee crisis that one needs to look into. And they say that this act would in fact be contradiction with the principle of, the non-refoulement, which has been widely recognized as a principle of customary international law. So this is what the plea had said. I think it comes as a relief for the petitioners who had filed this particular PIL with the help of the senior lawyers, Prashant Bhushan, who have gone inside the Apex Court and fought for the Rohingya refugees' rights.
All right, let me bring in Raghavendra Rao really quickly. Jessica, thanks for those updates. Raghavendra, my question to you is in terms of India's role when it comes to the crisis of the Rohingya Muslims. I mean, there's been struggle in nearby Bangladesh and some of the other South Asian countries. To what extent is the role that India plays, whether it's the Supreme Court or the government, in the plight of the Rohingyas? How is that going to really play a role on how India is perceived when it comes to accepting the Rohingya refugees?
Well, Archit, these refugees who have fled from Myanmar and are now seeking refuge either in Bangladesh or in India, they are fearing mass persecution in their homeland. Now, they say that they have been living there for generations, and now they are in a situation where they are facing mass persecution. The government on the other side has made it clear that most of these people are terrorists, and so it's a government's battle against a people who are being labeled as terrorists, while these people are now fleeing Myanmar in huge numbers and seeking refuge elsewhere. Now, the fact that many of these refugees have found shelter in Bangladesh. Bangladesh has has opened its doors to some of these people, while many Rohingyas are still awaiting entry into Bangladesh. And, you know, there are reports of scores and scores of Rohingyas having drowned while crossing a river before they enter Bangladesh. So this tragedy is playing on continuously for the past few days. The number of deaths which have happened, the number of Rohingyas who have been killed during these operations being conducted by the Myanmar army. Also the fact that these Rohingyas who have found their way into India and are now living in several Indian cities, there is a lot of pressure also on the Indian government to make its stance clear internationally as well. And the fact that now these refugees are invoking several international conventions and are arguing that India is indeed obliged to honor those conventions which it is signatory to and cannot unilaterally deport these people back to a war-torn zone, so to say. It has made the situation a little more complicated than it was earlier. Now all will depend on what the Indian government's stance on this matter is before the apex court, and for that we will have to wait for September 11th.
All right, Raghavendra getting us the very latest on the Rohingya issues. Thank you for those updates, Raghavendra. Certainly a wait-and-watch game.